There are 3 things in your garage right now that can water your entire raised bed for 2 weeks without you touching it. 1 bucket, 1 length of old rope, 1 small hole. That is the complete system. No battery, no timer. That needs reprogramming every spring. No drip line that clogs in August, and you find it dead in September. The mechanism running it is older than every irrigation product you have ever bought, and it works because of something water does on its own when you give it a narrow enough path. Here is what you're walking away with today. How to rig a 5-gallon bucket to feed 3 containers or a full raised bed indefinitely. The rope material that outperforms wool for longevity, and one you probably have in the garage right now that will rot in a single outdoor season, no matter how cleanly you build the rest of it. The depth number that separates a wick that pulls all summer from one that stalls in week 2. And the gap mistake that kills every system that gets built correctly and still dies quietly in week 3. Capillary action. Water climbing a surface it should not be able to climb against gravity because the adhesion between water molecules in a fiber surface is stronger than the weight of the water itself. In a channel narrow enough, water does not sit at the bottom and wait. It pulls itself upward. The narrower the channel, the higher the climb. A length of rope is not a single tube. It is thousands of individual capillary channels twisted together, each one acting independently on the same water supply. One end of the rope sits in a reservoir. The other end sits in dry soil. The rope moves water from wet to dry automatically, continuously, and slows itself down when the soil reaches saturation because there is no longer a drier zone pulling it forward. The system self-regulates. It does not know it is doing this. It just follows chemistry. That self-regulating behavior is exactly what commercial self-watering planters charge $40 to $80 to replicate in molded plastic. A reservoir built into the base of the pot, a wick channel built into the wall. The mechanism inside that $40 planter is identical to a $5 bucket and a piece of rope. The physics does not know the price point. This is also why unglazed clay pots buried in the ground, Aulas, kept crops alive in Mesopotamia and across arid China for 4,000 years. The clay is porous, water seeps out molecule by molecule at exactly the rate the surrounding dry soil pulls it. No waste, no runoff, no watering schedule. The plant dries the soil next to the Aula. The Aula responds. A rope running from a bucket to a raised bed is the same transaction. The container changed. The principle is 4,000 years old and costs nothing. Now, about the wool. A raw wool fiber has a structural contradiction built into it. The outer shell of every strand is coated in lanolin, the waxy substance that makes a wet sheep smell the way it does and keeps rain rolling off a fleece in a field. Lanolin repels liquid water. That is the whole evolutionary point. Set a raw wool rope in a bucket, and it resists wicking for the first day or 2 because the lanolin layer is actively rejecting water at the fiber surface. Wash the rope once with dish soap, and the lanolin strips off cleanly. What is underneath is different. The cortex of a wool fiber makes up roughly 90% of its total structure and absorbs up to 30% of its own weight and moisture, transferring it continuously and steadily once the waxy outer barrier is gone. Washed wool rope wicks. In a sheltered outdoor setup, it also resists the mold and the slow compression that collapse cotton within a single growing season. The full material ranking is worth knowing before you build, because the title names wool and the honest picture is more useful. Solid braid nylon is the best option most people already own. Detergent washed 11mm nylon rope reaches 25 centimeters of capillary rise in 100 minutes and 55 centimeters in 20 hours. It holds that performance in year 1 and year 5. No rot, no compression, no mold forming at the reservoir entry point. An old acrylic mop head pulled apart into individual strands is the second best free material in most garages. Acrylic does not biodegrade and the fibers wick consistently for years. Cotton wicks cleanly and falls apart in 1 to 2 outdoor seasons. Use it. For indoor containers or for a setup, you are rebuilding each spring anyway. Untreated wool, anything with a waxy or waterproof coating, and most acrylic yarn labeled as washable, will wick inconsistently or stall on the first dry stretch. The mechanism is identical across all of these. The fiber determines how many seasons you build once versus how many times you rebuild. 4 steps, none of them complicated. One of them decides whether the whole system works or not. Drill a single hole near the base of a 5-gallon bucket. Thread the rope through and tie a knot on the inside. The knot keeps the rope seated against water pressure and prevents it pulling back through under tension. Run the rope from the bucket base along the ground to your bed or container and bury the end 6 to 8 inches into the soil, not surface level. 6 to 8 inches is root zone depth. That is where moisture arriving from below gets used. Shallow burial brings water to the top inch, it evaporates in the sun, and the root mass below stays dry anyway. 3 wicks per 5-gallon bucket is the working maximum. Beyond that, you drain the reservoir faster than the soil can absorb, and you end up with wet mulch and dry roots. For a standard 12 square foot raised bed, 2 buckets and 6 wicks covers the bed without pooling. Position the bucket at or slightly below the soil line. Every inch of elevation you add above the soil increases the pull distance the wick has to overcome. Keep the height differential under 12 inches or you're working against physics instead of with it. Cover the bucket with anything opaque, a lid, a flatboard, a piece of plastic. Uncovered water in direct sun grows algae in 4 days. Algae blocks the rope hole at the base and the system stops without warning. 1 piece of wood on top. Clean water all season. Here is where correctly built systems still die in week 3. The rope has to maintain unbroken physical contact from water to soil along the full length of its run. 1 air gap, a kink where the rope lost contact with itself, a dry, bleached section from running in direct sun, a spot where the rope lifted off the ground across a low point, and capillary action stops completely. A pressurized drip line pushes through a partial blockage. A capillary wick does not. The mechanism is a chain of water molecules adhering to each other and to the fiber surface. 1 broken link and the chain ends. The plant tells you about it 2 days later when the soil is already dry. Run the rope through a length of narrow tubing for the exposed section between the bucket and the soil entry point. Old garden hose, a length of narrow PVC, leftover conduit, anything that keeps the rope shaded, compressed against itself, and physically continuous for the full run. Threading the tubing takes 3 minutes on day 1. A wick inside a tube runs the full growing season without a gap forming. Without it, full sun exposure bleaches the exposed rope dry within a month, and you spend the rest of summer troubleshooting a system that looked perfect when you built it. One last thing, because the math here is more useful than it first appears. 3 wicks at 12 milliliters per hour each moves roughly a liter of water per day into the bed. A mature tomato plant at peak summer heat pulls close to 2 liters per day. 2 buckets, 6 wicks, you are covering a full plant load. The reservoir size adjusts the window. A 20-gallon container on the same 3-wick setup runs 11 to 14 days unattended between refills, confirmed by growers running wicking beds through full summers. That is the vacation problem, solved with a drill hole and old rope. 4,000 years of passive irrigation, physics that never changed, available in the garage right now. Share this with whoever keeps asking you to water their plants while they are away, and I will see you in the next one.